Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Running Tales, the podcast where we tell the extraordinary stories of everyday runners. My name's Craig, and along with my wife Michelle, we are incredibly approaching around 200 episodes of this podcast, where we've been talking to people who've overcome everything from addiction and mental health problems to sometimes chronic illnesses and so on, such as cancer or cystic fibrosis. We've spoken to people who've run incredible distances or who've rallied themselves to run 5K when that seems like going to the moon for them, or to some people who've raised thousands of charity, like today's guest, Jack Syder-Mills, and have also done their own challenges along the way. We'll tell you a little bit more about Jack's story in a little bit. Most of these people, all of these people, in fact, have fallen in love with running, and it's helped to shape and change their lives for the better. As I said, today's guest is Jack Syder-Mills, and he's no different to all those other people we've spoken to because he really does have an incredible story. While most of us were perhaps enjoying a nice drink or celebrating watching the fireworks as New Year came in this year, 2026 arrived, Jack was doing something rather different. He was setting out on the first of 6 half marathons that he was due to complete on New Year's Day. And the challenge was all part of raising vital funds for Brain Tumour Research, a very close cause to Jack's heart because his sister Ella had been diagnosed with a brain tumour a few years ago. Ella's fortunately doing much better now. She actually self-diagnosed, which I find incredible. We'll get into a little bit of that with Jack as well. Anyway, just before we get onto our conversation with Jack, do me that big favour, give me a like, or rather give Running Tales a like and review. Please, please, please. It helps to spread the word about what we're doing. Anyway, enough of me waffling on. Let's get to this week's story with Jack Syder-Mills. So yeah, hi Jack. Welcome to the Running Tales podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. And we'll start off with your kind of your latest achievement. And while everybody else was welcoming in a new year, maybe with a headache or partying and all that sort of thing, you were doing something very different. Do you want to just explain to people first of all what that challenge was, and then we can get into the very important why.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Craig. It's really good to talk about it. Um, the challenge itself was I wanted to do something which would inspire people, which hopefully would be labeled insane, and people would be able to look at it and go, "Oh, that's really quite difficult," and it would get a bit of media attention and interest around the charity that I was raising money for, which is Brain Tumour Research. So I'd done a few ultra marathons before, like 50 milers and 50Ks and that sort of thing. But I wanted to do something that was more fatigue inducing rather than one continuous running bit of running. I wanted to do blocks where you'd have short breaks in between, but the fatigue would build up. And also, I thought New Year's Day would be a good test of that because going into New Year's, you don't get any sleep. And the adrenaline was running through my body so much that obviously going into the day, I wasn't getting any sleep. So the format was 6 blocks of 20.26 kilometers. It's like a play on 2026
Yeah.
and finishing by 2026 on New Year's Day. So just over 20 hours. In the end, it was just under 20 hours, but I set off at the sort of 3 hour, 24 point each time throughout the day. I think there's a lot of memorable things which we can touch on, but like definitely the first block setting off as soon as the clock struck midnight and seeing
Yeah.
all the fireworks for the next hour, like running through this field and just seeing fireworks from all different angles was very cool. That's probably a big memory. And towards the end, like running into the sunset on block five, it's this purpley orange sunset, which is really beautiful. Those are probably the two big moments like
What,
that come to
what,
mind.
yeah. What did your friends and family think of you when you sort of said I'm going to be doing it as the fireworks are going off as we go into a new year? Were they like, oh, look, I quite want to go to the pub or the club or something, and I'm going to have to go and watch Jack go running.
Yeah, I picked up running in the last like 2.5, 3 years. So um, about 3 years ago, I genuinely couldn't run a 10K. I was very unfit. I had a very like a job which didn't give me time basically to keep fit. I had a big career change, and after that, got into a bit of like half marathons and road running, and then found trail running, which is where my real love is, being outdoors. I think I've always been a bit of an adventurer. I just like exploring new places and getting stuck in, into the trail, the fell, sorry, the fen or the mud or wherever it may be. crossing bogs in Dartmoor or going up the Lake District, all those sorts of things, just like going to new places. I really love it. And um, when I told my family that I was going from sort of a 50k to a 50 mile, from that to New Year's Day, sort of 120 odd kilometers, I think they all looked at me like I was completely insane, which was sort of the objective. I wanted it to be labeled an insane run. I also wanted to just, like a lot of people say with these things, just test my limits, just really see like how far I could go and whether I would break and how it would be. There's definitely a lot of low moments, but like not as I expected really, like earlier on. And my mum was really supportive. She was doing all the logistics, driving around the car and stuff. Other members of family were supportive as well once they knew I was definitely doing it. I think there was quite a bit of skepticism for a while. And then like in the 3 months leading up to it, I was really building up the training, doing like 100 kilometers a week for a few weeks, like consecutively, which was quite intense, and then tapering off. So once I started doing that, I think they started to think, okay, it's serious.
Yeah. Um, and I think I've read somewhere, and you have to correct me if I've got this slightly wrong, that as well as doing all that wonderful logistics work, that Mum was intending to kind of run the last little bit, and I'm not quite sure how far that was with you, if she could keep up at that stage. Did she manage to do that?
Yeah, yeah, no. So the idea was I was trying to think through the blocks, like once the fatigue is starting to come in, how might I offset that? And for the last block, I was thinking, well, towards the end, it would be really nice to do a bit with mum,
Yeah.
um, and just to try and take it in. She was really tired at that point, and it didn't end up doing 10 kilometers. But the idea was basically to walk, like power walk, like 10 kilometers. We ended up doing about 5 or 6, and then at the end, I thought, well, this is insane. At the end, I'm just going to do loops of a car park just to add to the insanity, add to the mental insanity. So I did that, just 100 loops of this car park for the past couple of kilometers, which is funny.
I love how at the end of that epic achievement, you became like every runner going out for their chatty run, just looking at the Garmin going, have I reached that target yet? That's
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, like to the 0.01 kilometer, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, listen, I will go into some of the amazing things that happened along the way, and you're running more generally. But we really ought to talk about the sort of why you did it, because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, isn't it?
I think you're spot on, yeah. Like, I don't think I would, looking back on it now, I'm like wondering whether I would have been able to do it without the why. It's definitely taught me some things about like how to keep going. I knew that it was for a big cause. I also knew that the so on block 4, as I was running into this little town in Norfolk called Aylsham, it's about 10k into block 4, it's about almost halfway. There was the BBC crew there, and they were interviewing me, so that was obviously motivation to be running well at that point. But the why was really because my sister, she in July 2023 was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and she was studying neuroscience at the time at Keele University. So she essentially used her lecture notes to self-diagnose and went to her GP. It gave her the confidence to, be able to say, I definitely think that I should have an MRI scan. And then she was diagnosed with a tumor, but at the time we didn't know if it was cancerous or benign, which is
Mm.
obviously that was really the worst period, a few weeks of a lot of uncertainty. No one likes uncertainty, especially when it's related to health. And after a couple of weeks, we then got the diagnosis that it was benign, and she had some treatment. She took some medication, which has shrunk the tumor. It took quite a long time. It was only recently that we've seen definitive evidence it is shrinking after a couple of years. And I'd done a small fundraiser before in 2024. I did the Dublin Marathon, but
Yeah.
I didn't. I wanted to raise quite a lot more money as I looked into it more, and talked to her more about it because she's studying a master's in medicine now, so she knows a lot about these topics. I realized how underfunded the area is, also how little awareness there is of brain tumors and their various forms. So I wanted to do something about that. And it just sort of combined quite well with, at the time, thinking of doing an insane challenge, inspiring people and raising money. And it all sort of just came together. I remember it was just one night in August, I think, and I just said, I'm going to do something insane. It needs to be over 100 kilometers. It needs to try and be memorable. So I mapped out New Year's Day and the 20.26 thing. And then I put it all out on social media and the internet that I was doing it just to commit myself. And then in the months that followed, I sort of thought, oh God, what am I doing to myself? So by committing myself, it was then set in motion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if do you know what, if I ever touch wood, it doesn't happen, but if I ever end up in that situation where I'm dealing with something as horrendous as a brain tumor, I think I definitely want your sister in my corner if she was able to self-diagnose her in that way. And fantastic news that it was benign rather than anything more sinister. So yeah, fantastic. But um, I think I've seen you talk about the comparison between some of the statistics about brain tumor and how much brain tumor is spoken about in comparison to things like cancer and so on, which is obviously extremely serious, but tends to monopolize the conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think unfortunately I was having this discussion with someone, and they were saying, "Oh, what sort of progress have we made?" And I think with a lot of cancers, it's sort of early diagnosis, early treatment. So we have got better sort of scanning techniques,
Mm.
better medication, and that all helps, early diagnosis and early treatment. The reason why I think it is so the statistic is only 1 to 2% of research funding is on tumors, but it kills more young people and adults under 40 than any other cancer. And I think the reason for that is because the brain is just so fundamentally complex, like we
Yeah.
don't even fully understand all of its inner mechanics and how they relate to one another. So I think that's a big factor. People um, struggle to see some of the same breakthroughs that they do with other cancers, and it's a more tricky one to work on. But awareness is really, really key. I think just giving people clear information on what the symptoms are so they can get checked out early. I think probably where the biggest gains are.
Yeah. So Jack, let people know now what those symptoms are, what they should look out for potentially in the very worst case scenario in friends, colleagues, even themselves.
Yeah, so my sister, she noticed sort of extreme fatigue over quite a long period of time, and she was studying her for her final year exams. She was doing a neuroscience bachelor's, and a lot of people might attribute that to stress or overwork, just feeling really, but it was more like consistent grinding sort of fatigue all day.
Yeah.
She also had a lot of mood swings, like very crazy mood swings that she attributed to sort of hormonal imbalances. And her sight was deteriorating as well. What I didn't realize is so it was known as a pituitary gland tumor, which sits sort of on top of your nose and can push against your optic nerve. And so it was caused. She had 20/20 vision, but her sight was deteriorating, and she was getting really bad migraines regularly as well. So she pieced all of that together, really. And if you're experiencing a couple or all of those symptoms, it's definitely worth getting checked out.
Mm. And I think as with all those things, that's probably one of the biggest isn't it? It's like don't be worried about going to see your doctor and talking to them because the worst the worst inverted commas thing is that the worst and the best is that they can turn around and say, you've wasted 5 minutes of my time. There's nothing wrong with you.
No, that's yeah, exactly right. Like I think my sister now she has like a really strong understanding of what you just said. Essentially, that people without the medical background or training, who haven't studied neuroscience or seen it in a lecture, they're not going to feel as confident going up to their GP and going, "Oh, I think I've got this." Whereas
Mm.
she did, and so that's allowed her to sort of recognise that and be a bit more empathetic to people who struggle to maybe articulate their concerns. And yeah, like I think especially I you see it in other contexts, don't you? Like certain guys, they struggle to go, oh, I'm having this problem, and go to the GP and get it checked out. They think, oh, it's nothing to worry about, or it will pass, or it doesn't make me look very strong, or whatever. It doesn't hurt, does it, to get any concern checked out, no matter how minor? I don't think.
No, 100%. I mean, I don't know, as blokes, we're terrible, aren't we? We just tend to go, oh, I'll be all right, or whatever. It's just like, carry on. I haven't got the time to go and do that. And really, everybody needs to go and do that if they are worried, because early diagnosis is so important in all of these things. So yeah, Jack, let's talk about the running. Let's talk about getting this challenge done. So you set off among the fireworks. I'm presuming that with something like that in front of you, the idea was to try and go nice and steady as you went along. What sort of planning went into, I suppose, did you have set times for each half that you were looking to achieve in those blocks?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So for the first one, I sort of had um, a comfortable but not slow, like 1 hour 50 for the first block. And I think it was about that. And then that would give me a good hour and a half break to just relax, maybe have a little rest, eat some food early on.
Yeah.
That was a strategy I wanted to sort of eat immediately because I found if sort of eating 10, 20 minutes before you're about to run, it's never usually, it doesn't go down well, basically, in more ways than one. So having a good hour and a half break on that. For the second one, it was a bit further. So for that one, it actually ended up being just a bit over a half, just because it was just the way the route was structured. It meant that it took a while. And so I wanted to be really fresh for that. I knew that it was, that was actually, that second block was the hardest. So I knew going into that, it was going to be difficult. The main reason was just, it was this long trail of like complete repetitiveness. Like it's beautiful, but when it's dark, you don't notice the contours of the trees. It's just a load of dark trees. And
Yeah.
there was headwind as well, so like major headwind whole route because it's one straight trail. So you don't go around corners and get some tailwind. It's headwind the whole way, and like -4 because of the wind chill as well. So going into that, I was thinking I need my energy levels up. Quite a few bananas going into that, and I wanted to do that in about 2 hours 10, which again it was about 5 minutes under that or something. And from that point onwards, I started to think, well, I'll slow down a little bit, like 10 to 15 minutes maybe each time. The next one was about 2:20, and the next one was about 2:25. So
Yeah.
I kept the pace quite well. I didn't push too fast too early. And when I felt like I was really struggling, then I did slow down a lot and walk for 0.1 miles, run for 0.5. I had to do that towards the end of block 4, but it's really listening to your body a bit, because if you push too much, you're just going to wipe yourself out, once you get to the 100K point.
Yeah, definitely. And so did you say then that you were on a trail for that second one? Was most of this on trails? Because obviously that's much harder to do it on trails than it is to do it on a nice, flat, easy road surface.
Apart from the last 8K, which I ran some loops around a car park and walked with mum, everything else was on a trail.
Wow.
And some of the trails were quite difficult, like across like plowed fields where it's very uneven. There was also sections along, so the last block, the first 7 miles of the last block was along like a coastal cliff. So it was rock basically and very uneven. And I went the wrong way once. I just thought, oh, this little bit of road I can go parallel, and I couldn't go parallel. And I ended up just like right next to the sea on a rock face, then having to come back uphill. It wasn't after all that distance, I wasn't too chuffed.
No, definitely not. Well, you definitely sounds like you didn't make it easier for yourself. And I've got vibes of those sort of trail runs that I've certainly done, and I'm sure our listeners have done, where they head out and end up getting lost or something like that, and
Yeah.
and add all that extra distance on. But it must have taken a lot of planning to get those routes right in the first place.
Yeah, and with planning, you think a bit naively, oh, I can sort of put it on commute and know half the route. But my mum was really key in the logistics. With block 5, I'd never done block 5, and it was actually the most beautiful, I think, probably for that reason, because it was sunlight just towards the end of the day, and it was all novel and new territory. And so going into it, I thought, oh, I won't really do a wreck of it, which is stupid. Um, I won't do a wreck of it because then I'll enjoy it. Mum said, no, you need to do a wreck of it. So about 4 days before, we did do a recce, and I got lost on the recce. So
That's the right thing to do for sure.
and did an extra couple of miles. So I'm glad we did that. I wanted to make the first couple, especially in the dark, as straightforward as possible. So I did one which was sort of out, and then some laps and a bit through some marshes back home. The second was basically going to where I used to live along the trail, which I'd done 40 odd times. And the third one was some loops around that town. So the first three I sort of knew without, I didn't have maps or anything. It was just by memory. And then the fourth one, half of it was sort of new but relatively familiar. And the fifth one was what I recce'd, and the sixth one as well. So by doing it like that, I just thought, going into it, the fatigue is, as you go later as well, the fatigue's going to be quite high. So trying to simplify things, so you don't have to think as much. It's probably a good idea.
Yeah, and you touched on it earlier that it was the cause and running for your sister and running for all those other people who may have brain tumors and need help, and the awareness and so on that helps you get through. Obviously, that was hugely important. But I mean, were there any points in it where you were just, why am I out here? Why am I doing this? And how did that why help you through?
Yeah, there were definitely moments. There were some really low moments around blocks 2 and 3, which I still don't really know why I was feeling so low. But I think as the cold was just really biting me. No matter how much I was warming, I just like moving. Sorry, I felt cold, and everything was just repeating. So you're starting to go a bit insane, where you're thinking, well, I've been running for like an hour, and it doesn't really feel like I've just like there was periods where I just felt like I was in the sky, or just in the tree, just floating and not moving, which is a very weird thing to say because obviously it was moving. So
Yeah.
I think that was quite a low moment. It just felt a bit like, well, I'm not really moving. What am I doing? I'm not moving. And then block three towards the end, it was just I got cramped, like my muscles were all seizing up, and it was really hamstrings. It was really like hard to move. And so when that was happening, I did have a bit of a low moment where I thought, well, why am I subjecting my body to this? You know, Mum gave me a very good massage afterwards, and I actually felt better starting block four than at the start. So yeah, it
Yeah.
just shows you can bounce back.
Yeah, do you know, I've heard that from other people who've done those sort of challenges or multi-day runs and so on. That sometimes they can find themselves. I think I spoke to one guy who did. I think he did a marathon every day of the year. This chap, I don't know how you do something like that, but he did. And he said, kind of like 10 marathons in, which is ridiculous in itself. Everything was breaking down, and then he just carried on. And by 15 or 20, it's almost like his body just said, "You're not going to stop, are you? So I better help." And then it almost sounds like on a not putting down what you did, but on a slightly lesser level, that was kind of what happened to you as well, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think you do get these. I think you do get these small muscular tears, and it obviously does do damage, which means you need to rest afterwards. But
Yeah,
it was almost like your body gets conditioned to it a bit. And I think also once it's pivotal getting over that halfway point, because for the halfway point, for me, it was when the sun was up, and
yeah,
even though it was about 2 degrees warmer, psychologically it was just a lot easier as well. 'Cause you're not having to watch where you're placing your feet as much. You're not as wary about tripping it. That's the other thing about doing all the trails. It's just there are little tree roots everywhere, and some of these trails I knew where the tree roots were to the point of like 100 meters, but you're still likely to trip.
mm,
So when it's dark, I just feel it's more exhausting. Just trying to keep looking everywhere where all the little tree roots are.
definitely, definitely. What did it feel like when you were running around that car park at the end and you got to the finish and you completed this challenge?
It's really weird because block five, I was running into this beautiful sunset, and it felt like I was running into the sky. It was like a spiritual experience. It felt so beautiful.
Mm.
And I remember sitting there afterwards thinking, oh, there's another block to do. And I didn't feel slightly phased at all, which I never would have expected. I thought going into it, oh, that'll be the really difficult block. It won't be the end. So I'll be starting to really feel the fatigue, but I won't have the motivation because it's the last block. And I felt like top of the world at that point. And then running along quite difficult rock, along the cliff faces of the coast after that, which would be quite difficult. I was doing it at quite a good pace and felt quite comfortable. And I got to the end. It's weird. I didn't feel the same elation or high as I did at the end of block five, probably because it was a car park and it was dark. And it's not this beautiful
Yeah.
sunset. But I felt like I could have just kept going. Yeah, it was a bit weird. I thought, oh, maybe I should just go for another 4 more. I mean, that wasn't the goal, but I felt like I had more in the tank. So yeah, there was a great feeling, but also just a bit like I don't I don't feel as good as I did last block, and I feel like I could go further. So
Mm.
yeah.
No, it's funny. I again spoken to people at the end of challenges, and sometimes it's that deflation rather than the elation that you kind of think is going to be there. But looking back on it, after I think we're 15 days on or whatever now, 14, 15 days on, how does it all feel now?
Yeah, it's really I think it's only really dawned on me like the size of the amount of running I did and the impact it's had in the last couple of days. Because
Mm.
the days afterwards there was so much adrenaline. I remember going to bed at like 11 p.m. and getting up at 7:30, and I felt like very fresh and energetic on the 2nd of January, which I didn't expect. Didn't feel sore for days afterwards. And there was a lot of people messaging, a lot of media outreach, and all the rest of it. So I was sort of just buried in a way in that, just replying to 100 messages and doing all this stuff. And I didn't really reflect on it enough. I think this is something I often do. I just always sort of keep going, and it almost takes me a while to reflect on what's actually happened. In the last couple of days, when I've actually reflected on it, I've been um, like amazed, to be honest, by just the amount of people that have been so supportive. Like people that you just complete strangers that they saw you on the news, or they saw the posting at work, or they somehow came across it on social media, and they have a loved one that had a tumor, or they had a sister, or a son, or whatever, and they come out with lovely messages of support. The story has resonated with a lot more people than I thought it would. So that's been incredible. And I think more than anything, to me, it feels like my biggest life achievement just because the amount of people it's inspired. I've had so many people write to me to say it's inspired them to, do a bigger run, to try an ultra. Also had people just, obviously be very generous and raise a lot of money. It feels really good, like very meaningful to combine what you love with doing something good. So like reflecting on it has been, like, I've been blown away by the amount of support from people, and also just the amount of people who it's mattered to, like the amount of people, like I said, who've reached out and got a story that they can share as well. So yeah, I think that's been the biggest thing. And like a lot of probably ultra runners, they just a bit like, oh, it was what it was. It doesn't really feel like it was a crazy thing to do to me. Like I just got on with the running and did it. I haven't really got that sense, oh, this was insane. And I obviously see other people do. We're in a comparison culture and we don't need to do that. But I see other people that do absolutely in like 300-mile absolutely insanity stuff. So maybe that normalizes it a bit. I'm just a bit, oh, it's not that crazy.
And it reminds me of when I spoke to somebody before, again, was talking about how hard it can be sometimes to get attention in the media these days. You used to be able to run a marathon or even a half marathon, and you still can and make some money, but now you have to do something crazy to get some real media attention and to go there. And that was obviously in your thinking as you planned this event.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think running has just become more and more popular, hasn't it? And more people are running half marathons and marathons, which is great. Like we've evolved as entrepreneurs to move, and it's really good for our health, mental health, physical health, everything else. So you shouldn't take that away. But it has basically just created, like you say, more people doing these sorts of runs, which in the past, if someone was doing a marathon, I don't know, 50 years ago, they would have to raise a lot more money.
Hmm.
And now you do have to do a feat that's either like outside people's comprehension, they've not heard someone do it before, and usually implies a very large amount of distance or elevation. If you're doing both, then it's really impressive. But immediately after this challenge, I'm thinking of the most, like a more insane thing to do. So I think that's a factor here as well. People do these things and they sort of get a bit of a bug from it because the sense of achievement you have is amazing, but also that feeling afterwards, like it's not, you know, you get the endorphins, but it's more than that. It's just this like so much appreciation for things that you would normally take for granted. You like just having a bath and eating some nice food and not moving for a few days. It's the most beautiful thing. Whereas obviously, if you didn't do that, it would just be normal.
Uh, So have you crystallized any future challenges yet?
Yeah, I would like to run from. So I live in Norwich. I'd like to run from Norwich to London next New Year's Day, which is about 200 kilometers. But I'd like to do it within by sunrise of the 2nd of January. So I'd like to do it within about 32 hours, which I think is definitely realistic. I was looking into sort of doing it in 24 hours, but maybe that's something for the future. It seemed just too much distance to do. So that's what I'd like to do next. I don't think, I'm sure I know someone has done it over 3 days, but I don't think anyone's I can't see any public announcements from anyone about doing it for that sort of time period. So it'd be cool to just do something a bit novel again. I feel like it would capture people's attention again, sort of like an overnight run, 200 kilometers. So yeah, that's what I'd like to do next. And I feel like that would really, really test me because just an extra 75 kilometers.
Yeah. So we've spoken about obviously the why for this particular challenge, and so on, and the fundraising and how that is so important to you. But I think even despite that, there's got to be an absolute love of running and the trails for you in particular. And you mentioned that you'd only been running for 2 or 3 years, I think. How quickly did you sort of realize I really love this and actually I really love getting out on the trails and doing long distances?
Yeah, I would say it was about a year that I realized that I like long distances, and then maybe a year and a half to 2 years that I really realized trail running is for me. There's one run which really sticks in my memory, sorry, which was May last year, and it's Weaver's Way in Norfolk, and you basically go from near the coast, near Great Yarmouth, a place called Acle, all the way out to Cromer through the other part of the coast. And parts of it are a bit tricky, it's sort of ploughed fields again, and that sort of terrain. Very flat, obviously, in Norfolk, but um, just going through like places that no one would go through normally. There might be a few runners a week that go through there, and some hikers, some orienteering people might know it. But just this general sense, like it's just you and nature, and you're really exploring somewhere that other people haven't gone to. This sense of like immersion in somewhere sort of special. And that I really liked about it. I also just really liked this you've got more of a sense of moving forward because you've noticed changes in the nature and the landscape around you. So that added to sort of the exploration angle of it. And then I just found it really spiritual, to be honest, and very calming. Like I often say to people when I go out on a trail run, if I'm feeling a bit frustrated or annoyed about something, I'll go out on a trail run and just wipe everything away after a few kilometers. You get into this, which lots of people talk about, this flow state, this sense where you don't have anything to worry about and it's just you in the movement and this connection to nature, and it just completely calms me. I say it often just takes me out of the BS of the modern world. I can just forget about capitalism and all the other bad things that are happening and just like be there in the moment, be fully present. I think I really like that about it. So maybe that's the long philosophical answer, but
No, well, I think that is a big thing for a lot of people who do well running generally, but particularly trail running is that feeling of getting out there in nature, seeing different things and so on. And I find that one thing that's really interesting is how much in this country that nature exists on our doorstep. Those trails are far closer than we can ever imagine, aren't they?
yeah, and we've got so many good places. It's
Mm.
another thing I love about all the ultras. You can just travel to these different places in the UK and places that I've maybe been to once when I was a kid or something, but a handful of times. And recently, I did the Skyline Ultra in Kendal. I really liked that. Just exploring part of the Lake District. And obviously, there's so much for the Lake District to explore. So I want to go back there and try and do quite a bit of fell running. That's something I'd like to do as well. But also, it gives you that reason, an opportunity to say, oh, I'm going to go to the Peak District. I'm going to go to Devon. I'm going to go to Cornwall or whatever. I'm
Mm.
going to cross Dartmoor on foot. You just wouldn't have the reason to do that otherwise. Like, if you weren't into trail running, you wouldn't say, "Oh, I'm going to cross Dartmoor in 4 hours and 4.5 hours or whatever." Just wouldn't. So it's that sense of actually seeing whole places. Like all of Dartmoor or a big part of the Lake District. It's that. It's the sense that you've actually seen all of this nature in a way that others don't. When you're driving past, you don't see it, do you? It just sort of flashes by. People say walking is the ultimate mode of transport. Obviously, I'd say running is. But
Yeah, well, it's just the old Born to Run, isn't it? The Christopher McDougall book and so on, and that we're all meant to do this, and that we can really find ourselves when we're out there running. It sounds as if you've obviously done a few ultra races as well and so on. It how important to you is like the ultra running community, I suppose, because you hear a lot about that, and it's almost like I don't want to do any road runners listening to this down, but it's kind of like there's a different vibe to some ultra races and trail races.
yeah, they resonate with me so much more to the point where it's like I go to a sport. I really like the really rural ones where there's like 30 to 40 people
Mm.
and it's managed by Bob and there's no company involved or anything like that. And they're just trying to do it as cheap as 30 quid entry or so. I really like those sorts of like grassroots ultras because cuts away all the other you know corporate stuff and basically just focuses on like a lot of the time they've done the orienteering and worked out. I did one in the Peak District, tiny little ultra, the Ambleside Ultra, which I absolutely loved. It was quite a bit of elevation, but he'd carved these routes through all these tiny little, crevices, basically, what they called turnstiles, with these tiny little
Oh,
turnstiles going under like little bushes like this. And I was getting closer and closer to it, and I was like, well, this is what the GPS is saying. I can't even see like a break in this hedge. And then you get to it, and it's like as wide as the laptop. It's incredible how this guy has mapped it out. Um, and like tiny little part. I remember there was this tiny, tiny path within like a cornfield that I ended up running past about 4 times because I couldn't see the line of sight in the field. Those sorts of things where it's like it feels like a complete privilege to be there because without that person who'd done all that orienteering, it wouldn't even be possible. I really like those sorts of events. And people are just really laid back. I like the fact that they're not talking about times or competitive. They're just there to enjoy it basically and to have the high part of that to suffer obviously is sort of suffer and enjoyment related but just to have the experience and to do it and the time and everything else is irrelevant. I like that a lot. people just seem to be a lot more laid back and down to earth, very easygoing. They don't talk up their achievements or go around boasting about it. You just, I don't know, you end up talking about and people, I connect with people a lot more, basically.
Yeah, I think one of the things about running, and of course this can apply to road running if you're doing longer and longer distances as well, is it's kind of the further you go or the further you go for you. So I suppose for some people, again, this is only 10K perhaps if that's their
Yeah.
maximum at the time, and that's cool. But the sort of further you go, you suddenly start more and more revealing bits of your life story or kind of all sorts of bizarre things that you might never ever have spoken about to somebody you met half an hour earlier going over a turnstile, as you say.
Yeah, and also I love sometimes like in some of these ultras where it's like there isn't the pressure on time, for example. So sometimes I'll just run with someone and it happens that we're like I remember I was just running with some guy for like the whole 25 first half of this ultra and we just had perfectly synchronized pace, which was a bit weird.
Yeah.
Just talking about all sorts of things, like about his kids and his family and the 100 mile he was training for and some setbacks with that and injury and just people open up and I find this as well. Like I'm my chattiest and most confident and comfortable when I'm actually running with someone. You obviously have the endorphins and the feel good stuff, and
Mm.
it's what you're enjoying to do. But it's that flow state again. I feel like more lucid and articulate when I'm actually running. Like I can have a better conversation with someone. And a lot of the guardrails are down. It's like people say, oh, drinking alcohol reduces inhibition. I find you're just running, it reduces all inhibitions. You can talk about anything basically. So I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, no, definitely 100% agree with you on that one for sure. Have you got any big races coming up or any big areas that you're planning to be running in over 2026?
Yeah, so I'm doing the next ultra I'm doing is Pedder's Way, which is nearly 80K. I think it's 48 miles, I think. So, um, and through a trail in Suffolk that I've never done before. Was really beautiful. I've been so focused on this challenge, I haven't signed up for anything after that. But I would like the next goal would be March, April time before my birthday in April to do a proper 100K, and I'd like to do it within sort of 9.5 hours.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, 9.5, 10 hours. But the first one, I think, just aim to just try and do it,
Yeah.
um, and then build from there. For the next challenge, which is a bit crazy. As soon as it sort of settled in the scale of what I'd done, I was thinking, well, what's next? And that's the next New Year's Day challenge. But I'd like to sort of just scale from here. Try and because this one was a block format. I know I can do 100 kilometers consecutively, so just try and do that now, and then build from there. Really, that's my next goal.
Mm. So just like I know we said we're not going to talk about metrics and all that sort of stuff, but I'm just thinking if you're looking at 100K in 9.5, 10 hours, when you're running these other races, I'm guessing you've got to be pretty close to the front of the field.
Yeah, I it's funny. I don't think I'm as fast as I was sort of mid last year, even though I've done more running. I think I've actually built up so much fatigue from doing these big blocks, 100 kilometer week blocks, multiple weeks in a row. But when I did the 80K run, it was including breaks and everything. It was about 7:40 time,
Yeah.
which is a small event. It was a course record, and the guy in front was like 5 minutes ahead of me. So, and I was second. So it was. I ended up doing like an extra kilometer, getting lost, and then we looked at our times 5:36 and 5:37 average pace. It was ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
that was the determining factor. But again, with ultras, it shouldn't matter. But in that instance, it did matter, just for whatever stupid reason. So yeah, over those sorts of distances, I think it's just the steadiness. Like I have this ability I never knew before because I wasn't that fit like 3 years ago. But I just have a very
Mm.
strong aerobic engine for whatever reason. Can just keep up that pace for quite a long period of time. And I don't have to do crazy amounts of training. I think I'm just lucky, basically. There must be some genetic factor at play or something. But I have
Yeah.
an ability to maintain this pace. And people will destroy me in a marathon and a 50K, I'll be okay. But once it gets to that 80K plus point, I have like an ability to sort of, as time goes by, if you're maintaining that sort of pace, you start gaining time.
Yeah, I mean that was going to be my next question actually was around you came from a background of not being particularly fit and you haven't been doing it that long. Was it a big surprise to you when you suddenly realized that these longer distances, hey, I'm actually not too bad at this thing?
Oh, absolutely. It was a massive surprise. Like the first few 50 kilometers, I was doing okay, like 50-kilometer runs. But then when I did the 80-kilometer one, I was like, oh, really smashing this. And then when I did this challenge and felt like I had energy, it's really a complete surprise to me. I did not expect that at all. I thought I would be completely wiped afterwards. So yeah, I don't know. I can't explain it. It's just the case, you know. Off the game, I
Oh,
guess.
well, that's pretty cool. Does that make you sort of think as well? I want to go. Obviously, 100K is going to be further for you, but have you got thoughts on even further than that? I always think this is a ridiculous jump from 100K to 100 miles, but it's kind of the next step, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like just do that next, you know.
Yeah.
I think realistically, still 100. I think an absolute push with some proper training. I need to do some strength training. So that's sort of an area I've neglected, especially sort of mobility work, basically. I think with that and some, you know, like a good few months of proper training, I can do 100 kilometers without like consecutively without walking. But I don't know. There's always that doubt in my mind. Am I going to push it? Be able to put, how far can I push it from there? And
Mm.
with running, I've just found a good approach just to take it block by block. I know it sounds weird, but just take it block by block. Like start. This is the next day, and I sort of learned that the limits I had that I imposed are irrelevant. You know, like I forget who I was reading it by, but they're basically just, it's a common thing in running where they say basically, you know, your mind quits before your body does, and you've got a lot more capacity to keep going.
Yeah.
And you hear that and you're like, oh, is that true? Who knows? And then when you actually go beyond these limits, you realize that it's just in your head. You have to have fitness, obviously, but like it is in your head to a point, and it is imposed to a point. So I don't know where I can go. That's the honest answer. Like it's quite exciting, really, but just let's see, you know.
Oh yeah, well definitely the thing is to keep enjoying it as you're doing it. And I suppose with that in mind, what would you say to anybody who's starting out running and is maybe thinking of doing it just as something to do to get fit, or is thinking of doing it for a challenge to maybe raise money for whichever charity is close to their heart?
Yeah, no, it's good question. I always say with it sounds a bit obvious, but I always say with people like you've got to be enjoying it because
Mm.
for me, I have the ability, like consistency and discipline leads consistency, and the consistency results in the fitness improvements, and you being able to do more and more. But to have that consistency, you've got to have like something that's driving you, and you've got to be enjoying it as well, because otherwise it's like a chore, you know, and you know the neglected dishes get left in the sink. Basically, you know, you're not going to do it if it's a chore. So you
Yeah.
have to find something that you enjoy about it. Maybe that's like for me, it's going to new places and experiencing different nature bits of nature, but maybe it's for you, like, I don't know, making it more interactive, running with other people, making it a social activity. And it doesn't need to be about, you know, pace or times. Just start at a pace that's comfortable for you. And if you have to walk parts of it or walk it, that's fine. Just build from there. You know, like a lot of people, so, they, they get so bogged down by, oh, that person's running an ultra marathon. I can't even run 5K, so I shouldn't even start. You know, it's like anything, you know, you're building mathematical skill. You sort of start with basic arithmetic and then you go up to what, you know, advanced degree level. You've just got to build, and the hardest thing is often just getting out the door. I say to people, the biggest battle is just getting outside. Just put your shoes on, find whatever mental trick you can do to do that, and just get outside and just commit to running 2 kilometers or whatever, and then just try and go a bit further. And once you've done that, you realize that you really can go further than you think. I think the biggest battle is just people thinking, oh, what's the point? Others are doing bigger distances than me, and then they don't even go outside. They don't even try. And as soon as you make that action to physically go outside and set something, I think then the ball starts rolling. Really.
No, I definitely agree. I mean, one of the big things we say on this, we have, it's a podcast about everyday athletes who've done extraordinary things. So the people we've spoken to, you've generally done something a little bit crazy. But we tend to say, listen, find what your crazy is. If your crazy is running 1 mile down to the end of your road, if it's getting to park run and doing that 5K, go and do that. You don't have to run for 24 hours on New Year's Day or do these things. It's great that people like you are out there doing it, but yeah, people need to find their own little bit of crazy and find their reason for loving running. And I hope that that's a message we do get across on Running Tales, because that's the bottom line of it. It's none of us are elite superstars. We're doing this because we enjoy it.
Yeah, and also like there are runs where it will hurt. Like maybe you know your muscles are a bit sore, or also you're
Mm.
just like not mentally there. You're just finding it really like monotonous or hard or whatever. And that is where you know the showing up really pays off because it's like you're able to run through that. Then I have a bit of a sort of stoic mindset to running in the sense that you know if I have a bad day, then I feel it as that means that the next day or a future day will be even better, you know.
Yeah.
And also, I see it as part of the experience. Like, it's maybe a bit crazy, but I'm like, well, the suffering is part of it, and I'm here to suffer and learn about how I interact with the suffering, which I know is probably this case for a lot of ultra runners. They have that sort of way of framing it, but um, however, you can mentally trick yourself to do things that you might not enjoy that much, but afterwards enjoy a lot. You know, it's that sort of tied to fun. You might have a bit of pain to start with, and then afterwards you have this great high and this sense of achievement. And people, once they get into running and have done a few runs, I think that sense of achievement afterwards and the feeling and elation, that great contentment you have afterwards will fuel them to do more, you know, and it will get easier as well. Like the first few runs, if you're starting from nothing, are the hardest. It will get easier.
Yeah, definitely, Jack. No, I think that's really good advice, and I think everyone go out there and enjoy your running and just get into it and take your time and do what's good for you. Just finally, let us know how much did you manage to raise through the challenge, and also how can people donate if they feel that they'd like to.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. So I've been completely blown away by the donations. I think at the moment we're around, I say I'm talking about the number of individual donations first because it sort of shows the scale of the
Mm,
effort. Like this isn't matched by any corporation, company matched, or there's been one or two large donations, but not really. It's just been huge community level donations. I think about 245 people have donated, which has been amazing. And last time I checked, I think we're just under £8,000 with gift aid, or
fantastic.
6,333, I think, on the page, which is awesome. It'd be so cool, obviously, to get to a magic 250 number. But yeah, if people would like to donate, the easiest way to do that is basically to search my name, Jack Syder, Syder. It's a weird spelling, like cider but not spelled like cider, and then Mills Mills. And if you search that on the Just Giving page or even just on Google, it keeps, unfortunately, Google, it's got this weird ranking where it's got the old fundraiser at the top, so it's lower down. But if you just go on the Just Giving page or go scroll down, you'll find it. And yeah, even if you just like to share it with people, the story, that's great. I've been trying to share it now that we've reached a bit of a saturation point in fundraising. I've been just trying to share it with people to inspire and motivate them a bit. You know, like that's also been a goal to sort of encourage people to realize that they can go further and that the limits they've imposed on themselves don't necessarily need to be those limits. And just send a positive story in 2026. That was another big reason, to be honest. Like, you know, there's a lot of bad news out there. You know, it's nice to read something nice.
Yeah, it's nice to talk about the president of America not invading a country or something like that. So it makes a change, doesn't it? Jack, send me that link, and I'll make sure I stick it in the show notes, so folks you'll be able to find that in the in the show notes as well. So you can go and add a couple more pennies to Jack's incredible
Awesome.
fundraiser. Jack, thank you so much for joining us today on the Running Tales podcast. I really appreciate your time. Folks, if you enjoyed Jack's story as much as I did, go and give him a donation, but also give us a like and a share and pass this story on to as many people as possible. It's a corny thing to say, but it really does help more people to find the podcast and to come and like us and hear more stories like Jack. So thank you again, Jack. Thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you again next week for another episode of the Running Tales podcast.